The Sovereign Collective had endured for more than 12,000 years. It encompassed 280 distinct civilizations spread across 6 spiral arms of the galaxy. Their founding law had never once been challenged. Every inhabited world discovered by collective scouts would be absorbed into the Union. Compliance was not requested. It was expected. In 12 millennia, not a single planet had refused. When collective survey vessels located the third planet of a minor yellow star on the galaxy's outer edge, their commanders saw nothing unusual. The inhabitants were biological, carbon-based, and technologically adolescent. They had barely ventured beyond their own moon. Standard procedure called for a brief show of force followed by formal annexation within 72 hours. Fleet Commander Vreth led the initial contact squadron, 5 warships shaped like elongated diamonds, their hulls composed of a dark alloy that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Vreth was a Sulhuri, tall and angular with pale violet skin and deep-set amber eyes. His species had served the collective for 3,000 years and prided themselves on efficiency. He had personally overseen the annexation of 9 worlds. None had taken longer than 4 days. Distance to target planet, he asked, settling into his command seat. 11 hours at current velocity, replied Subcommander Orith, a younger Sulhuri with less patience than her superior. Preliminary scans show surface civilizations, rudimentary orbital satellites, no detectable weapons platforms. This will be routine. Vreth made a low sound of agreement. Prepare the standard address package. We announce, we demonstrate, we accept surrender. By this time tomorrow, we will be filing annexation paperwork. The squadron passed the system's gas giants without incident. Their passage went undetected, or so they believed. What Vreth did not know was that humanity had been listening to the stars for decades. 61 years earlier, a radio telescope array in the Chilean highlands had intercepted a fragmented signal of unmistakably artificial origin. The governments of Earth, for once, had kept a secret. A unified planetary defense initiative had been quietly assembled, funded through misdirection and shadow budgets, staffed by the most brilliant minds humanity could find. The project had a simple name, the Threshold Program. They built weapons. They built ships. They hid both with extraordinary care, disguising military satellites as weather platforms, concealing armed vessels in deep orbit patterns that looked like debris fields. Most importantly, they waited. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance was 32 years old, compact and precise, with a habit of speaking in short declarative sentences that her crew found either reassuring or maddening, depending on the situation. She commanded the patrol vessel Ardent, currently running a quiet surveillance loop beyond the asteroid belt. When her sensor officer, Doran, flagged 5 unknown contacts inbound from the outer system, she didn't raise her voice. Confirm configuration, she said. 5 vessels. No match in any database. Mass readings suggest capital-class ships, each roughly 8 times our displacement. Doran paused. They're not trying to hide. No, Vance agreed. They're not worried about us. She considered for a moment. Open a channel. Her communications officer, Yuki, turned in her seat. Protocol requires we contact Earth Command first. I know what protocol requires. Vance leaned forward. Open the channel. The main display flickered. The being that appeared was unlike anything humanity had officially confirmed. Tall, angular, clearly comfortable with authority. It registered visible surprise at being hailed. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance of the Earth Defense Ship Ardent, she said evenly. You are entering sovereign human space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Vreth recovered his composure quickly. In 12,000 years of collective expansion, no pre-contact species had ever initiated communication this way. They hid. They panicked. They sent confused transmissions to their governments. They did not hail you with the calm professionalism of someone who had been expecting your arrival. I am Fleet Commander Vreth of the Sovereign Collective, he said. Your world has been designated for integration. This is not a negotiation. Prepare your leadership to receive our terms upon arrival. Vance's expression didn't change. That won't be possible. Earth is not available for integration. I'd recommend you reverse your heading and leave this system. Silence stretched between the 2 ships. You don't appear to understand the nature of this encounter, Vreth said slowly. I understand it fine, Vance replied. You've done this before, and it's always worked. We're telling you it won't work here. I'd suggest taking that seriously." Vreth ended the transmission. He turned to Orth with an expression that conveyed something between irritation and academic curiosity. "Destroy their ship, then proceed to the planet." The Arden died in a single pulse of focused particle energy. But in the 40 seconds before the end, Vance's crew had transmitted everything: sensor readings, visual data, the recorded conversation, back to Earth. It arrived before the light from the explosion did. In a reinforced command center buried 400 meters beneath the Swiss Alps, General Irina Volkov watched the transmission end in static. She was 63 years old and had spent 30 of those years preparing for this moment. Her face showed nothing. "Execute Protocol Dawn," she said. Across the planet, the machinery of preparation shifted into motion. Civilians moved to shelters that had been stocked and maintained for a decade. Military installations went dark on the surface and came alive underground. In orbit, the disguised platforms began their transformation, panels folding back, weapons extending, targeting systems powering up. And something else happened. Something the collective could not have anticipated. There was no panic. Humanity had known this day was coming. They had chosen, collectively and deliberately, what they would do when it arrived. The broadcast that went out on every channel in every language was not a plea for mercy. It was a statement of intent. Asterisk, we did not choose this. But we will not surrender. Earth stands. Asterisk. Vreth's squadron entered orbital range, expecting a dead world looking up in helpless terror. What they found instead were hundreds of weapons platforms activating in perfect coordinated sequence. The opening salvo hit all 5 ships simultaneously before a single defensive screen had been raised. 2 collective vessels were destroyed outright. A third was crippled and drifting within the first 90 seconds. "Return fire," Vreth ordered, his composure finally cracking. "Target population centers. Force them to." The second human volley severed the flagship's primary weapons array. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Vreth's damaged vessel was retreating toward the outer planets, transmitting an emergency report that his superiors would find deeply uncomfortable. 3 of his 5 ships were gone. The remaining 2 were in no condition to fight. His message to collective high command was carefully worded, but the meaning was plain. Something is different here. On the collective's capital world of Ethon Prime, the report landed like a stone dropped into still water. High Executor Savin called an emergency session of the Strategic Council within hours. The chamber was circular, its walls inlaid with the seals of every civilization absorbed into the collective. There were a great many seals. 5 ships, said Council Member Draven, his voice flat with disbelief. "We lost 3 ships to a pre-contact civilization." "A civilization that was prepared," said Supreme Admiral Kassoth. She was the collective's most decorated military commander, broad-shouldered and deliberate, with a record spanning 40 years of annexation campaigns. Vreth's report indicates they anticipated first contact and built their defenses around it. They hid their capabilities deliberately. "Then we send more ships," Draven said. "I intend to lead them personally," Kassoth replied. 40 vessels. We will not repeat Vreth's mistake of underestimating them." The Strategic Council approved the deployment unanimously. What none of them considered, because in 12,000 years they had never needed to, was the possibility that more ships might not be enough. Back on Earth, the aftermath of the first battle was not celebratory. For orbital platforms had been destroyed. Sections of 3 major cities lay in ruins from the retaliatory strikes that had broken through. Thousands were dead. General Volkov walked through the damage reports with the expression of someone who had expected them and found no comfort in being right. "They'll return with more," she told the Earth Council. "We bought time. Now we use it." Dr. Amara Osei led the Threshold Program's scientific division. She was 45, relentlessly methodical, and had not slept more than 5 hours at a stretch in the past week. Her team had recovered debris from the destroyed collective ships and was already working. "Their shielding technology relies on a layered resonance system," she explained to Volkov, displaying a holographic cross-section of the alien hull material. "Each layer reinforces the next. It's extremely effective against directed energy. Our plasma weapons barely scratch it. But the resonance frequencies that make it work also create a vulnerability. If you match the harmonic precisely and deliver the payload at the right angle, The layers don't reinforce. They interfere with each other. The shield essentially cancels itself. How long to develop a weapon around that principle? We already have a prototype. We're calling it a resonance breaker. 3 weeks to manufacture in useful quantities. You have 2, Volkov said. They won't give us 3. She was right. The collective fleet arrived in 26 days, 40 ships in a formation designed to overwhelm and saturate. Supreme Admiral Kassoff had studied Vretha's battle data carefully and identified what she believed were the key human tactical advantages. She planned to neutralize each one. What she hadn't accounted for was that humanity had spent those 26 days not resting, but innovating. The resonance breakers worked. The first volley punched through collective shields as though they weren't there, destroying 11 ships before Kassoff could recalibrate her formation. Human fighter craft, smaller and more numerous than anything in the collective's tactical models, swarmed the gaps in her line using movement patterns her targeting computers couldn't track effectively. Lieutenant Marcus Webb led one of those fighter wings. His older sister had been on the Ardent. He flew with the kind of focused fury that is indistinguishable from perfect concentration. His squadron survival rate was the highest in the engagement. The second battle lasted 18 hours. It cost humanity enormously, 60% of the rebuilt orbital defense network, nearly half the fighter corps, countless lives. But when it ended, Kassoff was withdrawing with 14 ships remaining, and she was sending a very different kind of message to Ethon Prime. Asterisk, these humans do not fight like a species that expects to lose. Request guidance. Asterisk. Months passed. The war settled into a brutal rhythm of raids, countermeasures, adaptation, and more raids. Earth's cities were hollowed out, their populations living underground in networks of shelters that grew more sophisticated with each passing week. Surface life had changed beyond recognition. But the factories kept running. The ships kept launching. The people kept fighting. General Volkov coordinated with a growing team of commanders across every continent. Captain Ria Anand ran the Deep Space Interdiction Program, her small, fast ships appearing out of nowhere to hit collective supply lines and vanishing before any response could be mounted. She lost people constantly and mourned each one without letting it slow her down. Dr. Osei's team made a second major breakthrough: access to a captured collective communications network. What they found inside it changed everything. The collective isn't monolithic, Osei told Volkov, pulling up political maps extracted from the captured database. It's 12,000 years old. A lot of the worlds they absorbed in the last few centuries are still resentful. They comply because they have no choice, but they're not loyal. And there's something else. She highlighted a classification marker. They've designated us a Tier 7 sovereign species. What does that mean? It means they've never seen anything like us. Most species either surrender immediately or fight briefly and collapse. A Tier 7 classification has only been applied 4 times in their entire recorded history. It means they consider us a fundamental, long-term threat to collective stability, not just a military problem, but an ideological one. Volkov studied the data. Because if we win, every resentful world in the collective watches. Yes. This changed Earth's strategy. Captain Anand's interdiction missions began carrying a secondary purpose, not just to destroy supply ships, but to broadcast a message to the worlds along those supply routes. Asterisk, Earth fights only those who attack it. We seek freedom, not conquest. Any world that steps aside will not be harmed. Asterisk. The results were slow at first, then accelerating. 2 colonial systems declared neutrality. Then 3 more. The collective found itself managing an internal credibility crisis alongside an external military one. On Ethon Prime, High Executor Savin faced the most serious political challenge in his tenure. Supreme Admiral Kassoff requested a private audience and did not come to ask for more ships. "We cannot win this through force alone," she said. "Every campaign we run costs us more than the last. Their technology improves faster than ours because they are fighting for survival. Motivated species innovate faster than comfortable ones. I have studied every engagement. They are not getting weaker. They are getting stronger. What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting that in 12,000 years, the collective has never considered what happens if a species simply refuses to be conquered. We have no doctrine for this. We have no protocol. We have been operating on the assumption that persistence equals victory because it always has. She paused. It does not always. The crisis point came in the war's third year. A faction on the Strategic Council, led by a hardliner named Counselor Jeverick, pushed through approval for the deployment of extinction-class weapons, devices capable of rendering a planet permanently uninhabitable. The vote was close. The order was real. Earth's intelligence network, by this point extensive and deeply embedded in captured collective systems, detected the order within hours of its issuance. Volkov briefed the Earth Council in a session that lasted 4 minutes. They've authorized planet killers. Deployment in 8 days. We implement the Reckoning Protocol, or we lose everything. The Reckoning Protocol was humanity's answer to the unthinkable, a plan assembled in the Threshold program's earliest days by people who hoped it would never be needed and built it anyway. It was not a weapon. It was a message, but delivering it required getting a small team to the heart of Ethon Prime itself. Major Thomas Equime volunteered to lead the insertion team. He was 37, quiet, and extraordinarily good at the kind of work that left no trace. His team of 14 included soldiers, engineers, and one historian named Dr. Priya Chandrasekharan, who had spent years studying collective culture and knew what mattered to them. The Archive of Continuance, Chandrasekharan explained during the mission briefing, pulling up imagery of a vast crystalline structure at the center of Ethon Prime's capital. It's not just a building. It contains 12,000 years of collective history, culture, genetic records of every species they've ever encountered, and the original founding documents of their union. To them, it is sacred in the most literal sense. Every collective citizen has a personal connection to it. We're not going to destroy it, Equime said firmly. No, we're going to show them we could. Chandrasekharan met his eyes. And then we're going to show them we chose not to. Their ship, rebuilt from a captured collective vessel with human electronics hidden inside a collective hull, passed through 3 security checkpoints using forged identification. The collective's security architecture was designed to look outward, not inward. No species had ever reached Ethon Prime uninvited. The concept of an infiltration threat at the capital level had simply never required serious defensive planning. They landed in a maintenance district 2 kilometers from the archive, worked through the night in 4-person teams, and placed 7 quantum relay devices at key points throughout the structure: the Hall of Origins, the Memory Vaults, the Chamber of Accord, and 3 others that Chandrasekharan had identified as sites of maximum symbolic weight. Equime placed the last device himself, his hand resting briefly on the wall of the oldest section of the archive. The stone was warm and slightly luminescent. Whatever he felt in that moment, he kept to himself. They were off-planet within 4 hours. When Volkov received confirmation of successful placement, she authorized the next step. Every communication channel in collective space received the same simultaneous transmission, a detailed, technical demonstration of exactly what humanity could do to the archive and every other culturally significant site in collective territory, and a precisely controlled antimatter detonation on an uninhabited moon in the Ethon system, visible to every citizen on the capital world, a new light in their sky that hadn't been there before. The message accompanying it was brief. Asterisk, we have the capability to take from you everything you have taken from others. We will not. We are not the collective. We want only one thing: to be left alone. The next move is yours. Asterisk. The effect was immediate and profound. Citizens who had supported the war effort without thinking much about it now looked up at that new star and thought about what it meant. Religious and cultural leaders demanded that the Strategic Council protect the archive. 3 units of the collective's elite planetary garrison refused deployment orders, the first such refusal in recorded collective history. Counselor Jeverick's coalition collapsed within 48 hours. The planet killer deployment order was rescinded. High Executor Savin, facing the most fractured Strategic Council in the collective's existence, made a decision that would define his legacy. He contacted Earth. The negotiations took place over 6 weeks, conducted through secure quantum relay. Supreme Admiral Kassoth represented the collective. General Volkov and President Daniel Okafor represented Earth. The discussions were blunt and occasionally heated, but they moved. Earth's demands were considered modest by anyone who understood what they had just accomplished: recognition of human sovereignty, a demilitarized zone of 60 light-years around the solar system, and formal non-interference guarantees backed by collective law. They asked for nothing else. No reparations. No territory. No revenge. Kassoth, who had expected far more punishing terms, said so directly. "We are not the collective," Volkov replied. "We don't want what you have. We want what you try to take from us." The Treaty of the Threshold was signed on Armstrong Station, the orbital platform above Earth's moon that had served as the Threshold program's original headquarters. Collective vessels departed the solar system in good order, their commanders leaving with something none of them had possessed when they arrived: a genuine uncertainty about the limits of their institution's power. Fleet Commander Vreth, now serving as a minor diplomatic liaison after his early role in the conflict, found himself standing beside Admiral Kassoth as their shuttle prepared to depart Earth orbit for the last time. "In 40 years, Kassoth said, watching the blue planet diminish in the viewport, "I have never left a system feeling like this." "Like what?" Vreth asked. She considered the question. "Like the species I encountered was the more dangerous one." Earth rebuilt. It was slow, painful, and remarkable. Underground cities became permanent fixtures, incorporating the lessons of the war into a new kind of architecture, built to endure, built to defend, built to last. The ships that had fought for survival were retrofitted for exploration. The Threshold program scientists turned their reverse-engineered collective technology toward understanding the galaxy rather than fighting it. Across collective space, the story of what humanity had done spread through channels both official and otherwise. Some accounts exaggerated, some understated. All of them ended the same way. A small, isolated planet had declined to be absorbed, had fought the oldest and largest empire in the known galaxy to a standstill, and had asked for nothing in return except to be left in peace. Among the resentful worlds, the ones that had watched and waited, the story did its quiet work. 3 years after the treaty, 2 formerly collective worlds petitioned for independent status using the legal frameworks that Earth's resistance had forced into existence. Then 4 more. The collective did not collapse. 12,000 years of institutional inertia doesn't vanish in a decade, but it changed. The certainty that had defined it began, very slowly, to erode. General Volkov retired and wrote nothing. She had never been a person for memoirs. Dr. Osei continued her work, now directing a research program that was building the foundations of a genuine human presence in deep space. Major Equim returned to a quiet life and declined every interview request he ever received. And Captain Ria Anand, who had spent 2 years running supply line raids in the dark between stars, became the commander of humanity's first long-range exploration vessel. She stood at the bridge viewport on the day of launch and watched the sun grow smaller behind them. "Course set," her navigator reported. "Then let's go," she said. Among the worlds of the galaxy, one message had taken hold, passed between species in careful, quiet ways, the kind of communication that happens when no one in authority is listening. Asterisk, don't bother the humans. They'll fight you forever and then ask for nothing. Asterisk. When historians later asked President Okafor what the war had ultimately meant, he sat with the question for a moment before answering. "We found out what we're made of," he said, "and it turned out to be more than we thought."